I was walking down the street and I had a hoodie on and a backpack and my hands were in my pockets like this. You know what I'm saying? In my hoodie pocket. So these cops drove past me, turn around, and then they came out with guns pointed at me. And my head is kind of like down like this. So they're like, pull your hands out of your pockets. And I'm like, no. So they radioed for more backup. Then the whole police force literally was surrounding me with guns. So the spokesman is like, pull your hands out of your pockets. And I'm like, no. And he's like, we kept going back and forth 30 minutes. And he's like, why? And I said, you guys shut down Amadou Diallo because he pulls his hands out of his pockets. If I put my hand out of my pockets, you're going to say gun and you're going to shoot me.
I'm your host, Francis, also known as DJ Flex. And I know Charles has actually gone over and lived in the States for 4 years. Charles, could you actually give us an idea of what the differences are like between, let's say, racism in the States and racism in the UK?
I'll say from my point of view, racism in the UK, I grew up in the UK up to about the age of 17 before I came out to America, from 17 up to 21. And I would say that racism in UK is more underground, it's more under the surface, it's hardly in your face as it is in America. America, I think, is more open. It's obviously a bigger place. America is a huge country. And so it's difficult to also scale it to England because England is quite a small place comparatively. But that being said, racism is everywhere and it is here in different forms. We've experienced it personally in different ways. I was fortunate that I lived in 4 years and I can't say I ever had it to that level that, you guys experienced over there. Probably because I was in university, I was in Richmond, Virginia, which is still quite a tough place, but I wasn't around that too much. But my encounters with police were very cordial. 1 or 2 times we got stopped on the road. It was okay. But if I compare it to the UK, where I've lived a longer time, I've had experiences where the police have stopped me and my car, searched every part of my car just because I looked like I do driving a nice car. I think in the UK, we have those issues of profiling here, which is a different form. And the UK police don't have guns. So I think that's helped in saving a lot of our lives. Not to say that we are still dying here, but it's not as to the level as the US. So it's a shame.
So like when I was approached by the first time I was approached by the police with the guns surrounding me and everything, yeah, I mean, the only thing that helped me was the fact that Amadou Diallo, you know the story of Amadou Diallo?
Yeah.
The immigrant from Guinea who was shot down by the NYPD.
Yeah.
He pulled his hand out of his pocket, but his back was facing the cops. And then they claimed that he was pulling out a gun, but he was just pulling out his keys, right? So I was walking down the street and I had a hoodie on and a backpack and my hands were in my pockets like this. You know what I'm saying? In my hoodie pocket. So these cops drove past me, turn around, and then they came out with guns pointed at me. And my head is kind of like down like this. So they're like, pull your hands out of your pockets. And I'm like, no. So they radioed for more backup. Then the whole police force literally was surrounding me with guns. So the spokesman is like, pull your hands out of your pockets. And I'm like, no. And he's like, we kept going back and forth 30 minutes. And he's like, why? And I said, you guys shut down Amadou Diallo because he pulls his hands out of his pockets. If I put my hand out of my pockets, you're going to say gun and you're going to shoot me. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, and in those days, we didn't have these smartphones where people can record shit. This was the days of like the Nokias, those Star, you know what I'm saying? Nobody had recording devices unless you had a camcorder. And how many people had camcorders? So it's all like he said, she said type of thing. So it's only by grace of God that I'm here. I would be 6 feet under. If I had pulled my hands out of my pockets, I'll be dead. You know what I'm saying? So they literally had me there for almost 4 hours, just trying to get me to pull my hands out of my pockets.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was very insistent not to pull my hands out. If I made that one mistake of doing this, gun, pow, 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 I'm down. And you know what they'll do? They'll just plant a gun on you and say, oh, he had a gun. Look, that's what happens here. I mean, They fabricate shit. And at the end of the day, I'm black. People watch the news, they just see like black guy, 6 foot tall, you know, you fit the description. That's it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Fucked.
Yeah. So you can imagine how many African Americans from birth have gone through what I've gone through, have made the mistake of pulling their hands out of their pockets, or worse, and have been put in prison for nothing. You can imagine. Look at the prison system. They got like majority of the people in the prison are African American. You believe that every single person in there is guilty?
No, definitely not.
Do
Definitely.
you know what I'm saying? So like when you live here, you get to see all these things like for real. You start to see like, wow, this is what's really going on here. Like look at the guy who what's his name? George Floyd, right? They had the knee on his neck for what, 8 minutes? And there's another video, I think this is Gerald who just sent it to me, where you can see the bystanders actually telling them,
Yeah,
you're going
I've
to kill
seen
him.
it.
You're
Yeah.
going to like the guy's not moving. They're pleading with them, and every single cop who was present there is guilty. Every single cop there, we should get at least second-degree murder, and the guy with his knee on the neck should get first-degree murder because that is intentional. You wanted to kill him. There's no way around it. And the guys around there, if you didn't want to be part of it, you could just tell the guy, listen, man, I don't want to be part of this. If he dies, that's on you. I'm out of here. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All you have to do is just back off and leave, or pull the guy off the neck. You had a choice to make for 8 minutes. You didn't make that choice. So at the end of the day, you're all guilty. Every single one of you is guilty. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So and now you can imagine. You think George Floyd is like that big? Is that dramatic or whatever? You can imagine all the people who were killed by the police who are not even caught on camera. You see, we're just lucky that people have cell phones, and surprisingly, there's somebody who shows up and film it. But sometimes these guys are caught in the corner, in the darkness, and shit goes on. You know what I'm saying? Nobody records that stuff.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I don't. It's a huge problem, man. We can go on forever on this topic. You know what I'm saying? It's a very big topic. You know what I'm saying? So, and it all comes down to just skin color. That's all it comes down to.
I'll tell you my worst example of racism in the UK is when I was about 21 or 22. I spent a year living outside of London, and I lived in a place called Portsmouth, which is on the south coast, which has a lot less black people. And I lived in a neighborhood that, again, not many black people were there. And I remember one time there was some garbage outside of my house, and the neighbor came out and said, "Listen, I know you come from a place that is full of garbage, but over here we like to keep our place nice. So please, can you keep your place okay?" And that's the most overt racism I've ever had in my life. How do you know where I come from? And how do you know that the place I come from is not nice? So I say that to say this. Look, racism is very much alive in the UK. I think we're all from, Charles, I don't know if you're from London. Are you from London?
Yeah, I grew up in Hackney. So.
You grew up in Hackney, cool. So when we're in London, the percentage of black people in London is like 12, 13%. It's a bit more, we feel like we're in a bubble. But when you come outside of London, the average amount of black people in the UK is 3%. So when you come out of London, it's totally different, right? Francis, I know you've mentioned like you being in Leeds in the north of England, and the N word being dropped in front of you.
Like right there. Like,
yeah, right there.
It's crazy.
So the racism outside of London is different. And Charles, you kind of mentioned the kind of backdrop. When the West Indian immigrants were coming into the UK back in the 40s and 50s, there were racist, what's the word I'm looking for? People had stuff outside their houses which said no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. That's what they used to say in the 40s and the 50s. And I don't know when that stopped, but that was very overt. No blacks, no dogs, no Irish. My dad came here in the early 70s from Ghana, and he said, look, there were parts of London where you wouldn't go to as a black person. You just wouldn't go. And even today, my family bought a place just outside of London 2 years ago. And my brother, who's 23, walked into a bar. We call it a pub in the UK, but a bar. he went into a bar to try and watch a soccer game, and because the area is predominantly white, everyone just started looking at him, and the perception was, what you doing here? You shouldn't really be here. The racism that exists in London is very, in the UK, is very, very covert. I mean, I work in the corporate sector. I work in management consulting in the investment management industry, and in the corporate sector, again, Francis, you'll kind of understand this. There's not many black people in the corporate world, right? So we go there, and again, you mentioned having to present an aspect of ourselves which is not threatening, which is appeasing to the white man. We feel like we have our corporate selves, and then we come home and we have our normal selves, which is tiring. You know what I mean?
It's exhausting.
Absolutely exhausting, right?
It's the same
So,
here. I think it's the
yeah,
same
I
thing,
can imagine.
right?
I can imagine. Yeah. So it's the same stuff that we go through. We in the corporate world, there's not many of us that climb up above a certain threshold.
Okay. And why is that though? So, you know, why is that? How is that possible? You know, why is that there are not many of you in certain areas? It's the same thing here. And I know the reasons for it here.
Yeah.
But there's so many levels to this, you know, with racism. Here in the States and around the world, you know, I've been in about 30 countries. And you know, one thing, you know, it's very interesting. You go to the continent and I say, you know, whole different dynamic there because everybody looks like us. So, you know, when everybody gets to talking about, well, why things are the way they are, you know, everybody's looking at people who looks like us. So they don't even bring in colonialism or neo-colonialism or imperialism. They don't even talk about those things or whatnot. And in the same regard, over here in the States, you have institutional racism, and then you have prejudice, just individual racist acts. So those are two different things, but they're still married. You know, so when I say institutional, the way the court systems are set up here, the way the school systems and the tax money is dispersed, the way that the redlining is set up, you know, where the banks loan money. For example, like I say, we could talk all day about racism, but just to give you an example, we have what they call gentrification here. And so you guys have heard of Harlem, right?
Yeah.
You know, yeah. Harlem is a historic African-American community. And until the last couple of years, a lot of Harlem was all boarded up. You know, there was, you know, there was crime and so forth. There's, you know, and there are different reasons, you know, for that. And recently, you know, a lot of people who don't look like us have moved into Harlem and Brooklyn. And all of a sudden now it's clean, you know, and you got Starbucks, you got all these stores. But the part that they don't talk about is the institutional racism. The banks refuse to loan money to the people who look like us when it was just us there. And they leave that part out. They don't talk about that part. And then they try to paint it to look like they didn't want to do business when that is not true. There's so many things, even the computers we use right now. You know, when we say institutional racism, the fact that they only tell half the story and then even make, you know, the people who are living here believe certain things about themselves. You know, they lie to us about the continent. They lie to the continent about us. They portray, you know, who we are to the rest of the world the way that they want to. You know, but like I say, even the computers we're using right now, we would not have these. You know, Dr. Mark Dean, everybody should know who he is before Bill Gates is the one that created the personal computer. You can look that up. Don't believe me. You know, you can look that up. This brother, you know, computers used to be the size of a classroom. The only big businesses had them until this brother created what we call the personal computer today.
You know, here's a question, because I've always wondered, why do Americans name their kids those kind of, I think they're just very strange names, like Jaquan, for example. Like, what kind of name is that though, really?
I personally don't know the history behind the names, but I from what I think, like at least when I lived in Ghana, I remember there was a lot of African Americans used to come tour Ghana and go to the Du Bois Center and all that stuff. And some of them had names like that. And I think it's just, I personally, Gerald can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a way of creating a new identity for themselves, like which is maybe pointed towards Africa. Like, you know, so like for instance, like the names they were given as slaves, like Freeman, Smith, these are all white names. These were not their names. Their identity was taken from them. You get what I'm saying? Even getting a job. I could tell you one story. I went to Match.com. That's that dating website. I went to the headquarters in Dallas, right? And I have a German name, Jorgen. It's like one of my middle names. So when in those days when I used to apply for jobs, I used my two middle names, Jorgen Hinson, put on my resume. So you think I'm a white guy, right? So I went for the interview and I went to the reception desk, and the lady's like, "Oh, okay, she's gonna call the lady who's gonna come call me in." So they told me to wait, sit down on the couch and wait. So I'm sitting down, I'm holding my folder, I'm wearing a suit, you know, I'm just sitting down waiting, right? The lady who's supposed to interview me comes out, looks around the whole lobby for Jorgen Hinson and does not see Jorgen Hinson. She actually looks at me and then she goes back in. So 30 minutes later, I tell the receptionist, what's happening? I've been waiting here for 30 minutes. She's like, oh, she didn't see you? She just came out. And then she calls her in again. The lady comes in, looks at me, and her face literally just changes. You can tell like disappointment, like she's expecting Jorgen Hinson. You get what I'm saying? Her face literally just changed. And she's like, oh, what's your name? And then she's like, oh, okay. And then she's rushing the interview. Like you can tell I'm not gonna get the job. So I just told her, listen, it looks like you're rushing this interview for some reason, and I'm not gonna get this job. So don't waste my time. I'm not gonna waste your time. Okay? Let's just cut it off here. I'm out of here. You know what I'm saying? You can already tell, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. So imagine if your name is Jaquan McDonald or whatever. You get what I'm saying? That name already gives you away that you are a African American. So they've already judged you that that's your name. They're not even going to call you in for the interview. Do you get what I'm saying?
It happens here as well, you know. It happens here. It does.
You might be like a 4.0 GPA, like top of your class, whatever. Your name right there, you're guilty already.
I'm saying that the name that you see up here is my name. It's a Nigerian name. Oyekunle is. So of course, you know, we adopt different names as we grow up. That's not the name that I grew up with. The name that's on my birth certificate is Gerald Baker. That's the name that's also on my resume and the name that people know me at work, you know. But the other names that are more ethnic, Jaquan and Lakeisha and all those other names or whatnot, you know, we were under the impression that we would be treated fairly. We didn't know that we were under the impression, you know, from my generation, I'm 48, you know, at this point, but we were told that if you follow the law, if you educate yourself, you know, if you are, you know, a good citizen, that you will be treated fairly and, you know, get education, you'll have a nice career and all of that. And now we see, we had no way of knowing that. It didn't matter what we did here. You know, we had no way of knowing that, you know, even Obama, and that goes into a whole nother thing. But even with him going to Harvard, you know, being the editor of Harvard Review, being a lawyer, being very articulate and becoming the president, it still don't matter. You saw how they treated him, you know, you saw how they still treat him. So it don't matter what I do. You know, should we be able to name our kids whatever we want? Yeah, we should. Why not? What's wrong with the names that we you know have given our kids? I have two sons, and their names are Naeem and Jelani. You know, so yeah, you know that's going to be on their resume, and they're going to have to overcome that particular part. But I'm hoping that because of the skill sets that they will end up having, one is 16, one is 11. That shouldn't matter because the skills that they're going to have are going to be skills that there's a shortage of people who have those skills. That's the only strategic way that I see to go as far as raising my sons. But, you know, as far as the names are concerned, you know, we should be free to name our kids. What name should we give them? You know, should we call and William? You know, does that help? No matter what we do to conform, you know, it still has not solved the problem. So now, John mentioned about the term black. See, you know, we're definitely not a monolith here, because when I say black, I'm talking about everybody. You know, if you look like me, you black, you know, as far as I'm concerned. But of course, when I'm in Kenya, you know, it's absurd to even bring that up, because everybody over there is black. The majority, you know, 99% of the people are black. So this is a color issue is not particularly, that's not something that they're concerned about as much. You know, when I'm in Ghana, nobody, you know, that's a non-issue. You know, I recently got into a big thing with my family, because I explained to them, I said, look, you know, these issues about worrying about my kids being out in the street and being able to be safe, and me having interaction with police, every time a police is behind me in my car, even though my license, my registration is together, you know, here I am, you know, I have 3 degrees, I've done everything right, I send my kids to private school, and yet every time a policeman gets behind me and I see him in the rear view mirror, you know, my blood pressure goes up, you know, because, you know, I in my mind, he's following me. You know, if he pulls me over, I'm running through my mind, you know, what I'm going to say, etc. I've done nothing wrong now, but yet this is the terrorism that we got to deal with here, you know. So, you know.
That's the word, terrorism.
Yeah, and it's like this constant thing. And it doesn't seem to matter how much we educate ourselves or how much we pay for our house. It's hard to escape it. Dr. Henry Louis Gates, who was at Harvard, you know, he did a documentary about Africa years ago, and his background is not in history, and we were very upset with him how he portrayed Africa. You know, he didn't do his research very well. He went over there just trying to blame them for slavery and harped on that and everything. And he's at Harvard. He's talking about Harvard this, Harvard that, and all of this. And this place isn't like Harvard and all this stuff. And then a couple of years later, he was trying to go home. He was coming from out of town, and he had lost his key, and he was trying to get in his front door, and the police were called. He lived in a white neighborhood in Boston. And at that point, he was reminded. And that's when he changed, started to do better work. So now he's gone back and done another documentary on Africa and Africa in the diaspora in South America and all of that. And he did it properly, because we were very upset with him how he did it before. You know, he was doing it from a totally different mindset. So it don't matter what we do over here. That has been proven, and that is very frustrating to know that, you know, even though my son is a coder, he's 16, you know, he's a wrestler, you know, he has a high GPA, goes to an elite private school and all that. If something happens on the street and it's on the news, they're not going to care. They're going to say that, oh, he must have deserved it, or either he was a criminal. They're going to try to, there's nothing to find. He's never been involved in anything. And we've seen this happen, and that is frustrating, you know, but as far as, you know, some of the dynamics that happen over here as far as race relations amongst Black people themselves, you know, African Americans versus people from the Caribbean or from the continent or from Europe and so forth, you know, you have different levels of people's exposure when it comes to that, you know. So some people, you know, separate things. There's some groups that think they're better than others and smarter than others. But we got a lot of issues, and all of it seems to have started with the institution of racism. It was set up that way, you know. It was set up that way because otherwise they would have never been able to pull this off so long if all of us had been, you know, more unified. And even to this date, you know, if there was more of a sense of unity, then you know, there's no way that this would have gone on this long and continues to go on.
So what would you say to the people that would say, you know what, why don't you just go back to Africa then? You know, you don't have those problems. Go back to Africa. Mm-hmm. Go to whatever country you want in Africa and live your happy life in Africa.
Yeah, to be honest, yeah, I plan to, when I retire, when I stop working, I would like to build a house on the continent, on the East and the West Coast. But before we even get to that, we built the place. You know, who was anybody to tell us, you know, you're going to tell me, oh, built the place, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, my father was in the military, you know what I'm saying? He was a ranger, all this stuff. We done fought, did all this, and you're gonna tell me, hey, if you don't like being treated like a second-class citizen, you should leave after you built the place? Is that logical?
No, definitely
You know,
not.
is that logical? Now, we spend over $1 trillion every year. You know, if we weren't here, like I say, half the stuff that people are looking at every day, you just wouldn't have. And that's from the subway system, and we got the patents to prove it. You know what I'm saying? The subway system, the third rail, you got the subways all over the doggone planet. And who built that? Who created that? You know what I'm saying? You know, so when you look at those things and people say and make statements like that, you know, they have to be careful what they're asking for, because they still, you know, benefit from the genius that people here have done. And not just African Americans, but Africans too. You know, the internet, it was a brother from Nigeria. Uber, all the apps, brother from Ghana. You know what I'm saying? There's, you know, so this could go on. And it's because of the lack of understanding and the story told. If they told the whole story, we probably wouldn't have these problems if the curriculum was just and very inclusive and told the truth. You know, most people don't know about African civilizations and the fact that who taught who to read and write. You know, when you guys are in the UK, you know, have you been to Spain before by any chance?
Yeah.
The southern, and Andalusia, I've been there. I've seen the African fortresses there myself. I've seen them. I crossed over from Morocco and went into, and who taught who? They were the last ones to find out the earth was round. Who taught them? Well, who did they learn that from? And then what happened after that? Then they started to explore. Marco Polo, all these people started to explore, and then what has happened since? You know, the engineering, who taught who that? The truth, I mean, being honest. You know, who had that first? Who taught who that? Who had the Dark Ages and who brought them out of the Dark Ages? If everyone knew that, you have Shakespeare write about Othello and nobody, who was that? You think it was just one there? The Moorish general, you think he was there by himself? Nobody talked. Moors in Europe, and you see all of that. Nobody asks, well, who are these people and what did they do here? Why do they have crowns on? Google it and put in images. And why this? If they told the truth about all the history and the contributions, we probably wouldn't have racism. And they're fighting to prevent that from happening. You know,
the whole reason for them. Yeah. It's like we always say, we don't know much about the history of Africa before slavery or before colonialism, and there must be a reason for that, right?
It's a very big reason for that, because it's vast and it's a magnificent history. Any movie that they ever made, the truth is more extraordinary than any fiction that they can ever write, and that is a fact. That is a. You talk about the Great Wall of China, nobody talks about the Wall of Oksobo that surrounded Benin, which is longer than the Great Wall of China. How many people know that?
I didn't even know that existed.
You can look that up. The walls of Benin, longer than the Great Wall of China. More earth than it was used to make the pyramids, and nobody talk about that. That's no accident that they're not talking about. You know what I'm saying? So, but these are the things, you know, when they control the curriculum, and they don't just control the curriculum in the United States, they control the curriculum in Africa too. They don't.
Exactly.
I taught history, so that's why I know, you know. But when I go to the continent, many times I know things culturally, no, there's no way I can go to any African country and tell anybody culturally, you know more about their culture. The point I'm making is the education is even being controlled, you know, and even all this situation, this corona and all this, I don't trust the official story behind that either, but that's a whole nother topic.
I wanted to bring something up about Ebola. You remember the outbreak in West Africa a couple of years ago, the big outbreak?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm going to forward, I think it was a year or two after that. Now, Do you already know what GMOs are?
Yeah.
GMOs, yeah. Okay. So a couple of years after that, there was an
NGOs.
outbreak. No, GMOs, genetically modified organism.
Okay.
Yeah. So a couple of years after that, there was an outbreak in Nigeria, like, which was a disease that was killing tomatoes, all the tomatoes in Nigeria. Now in Nigeria, just like in Ghana, most of the food is tomato based. Everything has tomatoes. So if you take the tomatoes away, people are gonna go crazy. Okay. So there was a shortage of tomatoes. This disease just came out of nowhere. Now, there is a company in the United States called Monsanto. Does everybody know about Monsanto?
Ghana,
Okay,
that's-
they're the ones who basically engineer GMOs. They're the guys who engineer GMOs. So Monsanto mysteriously 2 weeks later goes on the radio waves in Nigeria advertising a tomato breed that is resistant to that disease. What does that tell you? Where did Monsanto come out of nowhere and just show up and say, we have a tomato that is resistant to this disease, and they're advertising it? Where do you think that disease came from?
From them.
You have to
question
create
I ask there is, how did they get in there to destroy the tomatoes in the first place?
it's easy, man. You just walk right in.
Pay
Walk
a
right
little
in,
bribe.
just drop it one place, it spreads.
Hmm.
Pollen is going to spread it. It's just going to spread to all the farms. It's very easy. So the thing is this, you have to create a problem so you can sell your solution. It's just like antivirus companies on your computer. They have to create a virus and say, hey, our thing is resistant to this virus or whatever it is. So now let's get to Ebola. Now you remember when Ebola broke out, they were saying that it's because the Liberians are eating bats and they're doing this, monkeys and all this crap, right? Okay. Now, you saw how lethal Ebola was. It was so lethal that I was actually supposed to go to Ghana that year and I canceled it. Like my mom just said, just stay here, don't come, because it's just literally that scary that you can look at somebody within minutes you got Ebola. Like that's how scary it was, and you're dead in like 24 hours. Okay. Now, how is it if a disease is that lethal? I'm asking you a question. If a disease is that lethal, how is it possible? I'm not going to name which country. I'm just going to say, how is it possible that a country has the confidence to bring an infected medical professional, their infected medical professional, back into their country and send them to their center for treating diseases, and mysteriously that person is Ebola free? How is that possible? How do you have the confidence to bring that person into your land? If it was your country, wouldn't you treat them outside? Would you bring them in?
100%. Leave them outside. Treat them
So
out.
how do you have the confidence to bring them in and treat them and they're Ebola free? What now with viruses? I mean, I'm no scientist, but I know that with the virus, there are different what do you call them? I don't use the word breeds. There are different versions of the virus. They keep what do you call it, replicating themselves. So like they could be like the flu virus from this year is different from the flu virus next year. So the treatment for this year will not treat the ones for next year because they've evolved, right? So if you are trying to create a treatment for a specific breed of a virus, you have to have that actual virus breed in your possession so you can test it to know that it works. And if it works, it means you're confident you have something that can kill the virus, right? Okay. So what does that tell you? That tells you that they had the antidote the whole time, which means the virus did not come from Africa.
Yeah.
But I didn't say who did it because obviously we're being recorded. I didn't say in the country. But all I'm saying is, you see, they don't talk about that on the media. Now, right now, for the coronavirus, we have Bill Gates and a bunch of idiots trying to push to test a vaccine in African countries, in case you don't know about that.
Oh, yeah. No,
why do you want to test the vaccine on Africans? Why can't you test it in your own country? Why can't you test it in Europe? Why do you have to test it on Africans? Because we are not regarded as human. We're regarded as animals. We are like the bottom feeders. That's how they look at us. They look at
Like
us as
3/5 of a human being.
yes, exactly. So let's just test it on the Africans. That's basically they look at you like that. How come they don't talk about that on the news? I've actually heard a CNN newscaster. I'm gonna find it, and he said something. I don't think he realized what he said, but he said something to that effect about so why don't they test it in Africa or something? But he said it in some subtle way, and I was like, damn, it's like they even say they don't even realize they're saying it.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So if they look at you this way as you're not even human, how do you think they're gonna treat you when you're in what when I use this their land? It's not their land, but I'm saying their land.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? I mean, no, it's not their land.
Yeah.
Now, to what Joe was saying about education, right? When I was educated in Nigeria till I was like 10 years old, and I went to Ghana for secondary school, right? And I remember when I was learning history, they taught us about Christopher Columbus. And what I learned in that history, I'm sure you guys learned it too,
Yeah.
that Christopher Columbus went to the land of the Americas and discovered America. Okay? Now, when we were kids, that we just take it like, okay, yeah, he discovered America. But now that I live here, I'm like, wait a minute, how do you discover a land that people already live in?
Facts.
That's a wrong terminology.
Yeah.
You can't say you discover something. People are living there. You can't say you discover something. And the second thing is, when he came to the America, okay, him and his people, they brought with them Anglo-Saxon Christianity, which basically is, if you don't take it, we slaughter you. They forced it on the indigenous Indians, or let me just call them the original inhabitants of the land. So basically, right now, if you look at this whole land of the United States, you'll see that the indigenous Indians, the only ones that are left, if any, have been pushed into these little things called reservations in like different pockets of the country. And they're literally they're almost extinct right now. They've given them alcohol and drugs. Good, seriously, like let's just say it as it is. I've seen documentaries and stuff where people go there, their lives are basically just fucked up. Like, you know what I mean? They're just destroying their lives. So they're almost extinct. So how is it possible that you come to somebody else's land uninvited, rape and kill their children, women, they slaughter everybody, genocide, and then you bring slaves from Africa to build the land, they built everything here. Railroad system, all these buildings, you see, everything was built by the slaves, okay? For free. They didn't pay them anything. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, we're with you.
So there's this thing, you can just keep going on and on and on and on. It's like a whole it's like a whole subject. It's so big. You know what I'm saying? So you can just tell from what I'm telling you, like what you see on the media is not what is what I'm trying to say.
No. Back on the point of what you were saying there, Tony, as well. I mean, I was fortunate to be moved out of East London, of Hackney, and I live in Essex, for example, and I moved there 5 years ago now. Essex is a very predominantly white area, you know, has been for many, right, has been for many, many years. And what's happened with the racists that were there back in the days, per se, they've now moved, they just moved along the coast and moved out. So they're moving out and we're moving in. That's what happened. It's almost like they're running away from us.
They're running away, absolutely.
But as they're running, they still leave a few pockets of them there. So even myself, in the neighborhood I live, there's only 2 black families on my road.
See, what happens here is like the city of Newark, New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard of Newark. Newark in the early 2000s was, I think, the #1 in the US, and I don't know what was in the world in homicides, like crime. Okay, that's in the early 2000s. Now, Newark had 2 sides. There's a site called Ironbound, which is where the railway tracks, like the railway tracks divide Newark into 2. So there's a part called Ironbound, which is got a whole bunch of railway tracks around it. And Ironbound is a very nice part of Newark. It's like a lot of Brazilians, Dominicans, you know, some Turkish. It's like, it's very diverse, very nice area. Okay. And this other side of Newark is the black side, like the literal brick city. You know, remember Redman, Method Man, they used to rap about brick city? That's this side. Now, this side of Newark, apparently back in the 60s, 50s, was all whites. So when the blacks came in, the whites left. So there's a lot of places like that, just like you're saying, the whites come, blacks leave. But what is happening is the whites are coming back and gentrifying
That's
the area and pushing the blacks out. So it's like
that's what they did in that's what they're doing here in London.
That's
Do
what
that
they're
in
doing in
Hackney.
London now. Yeah.
I mean, Hackney
Brixton.
back in the day, you wouldn't even want to buy a 1-bedroom apartment in Hackney in the 80s.
Buy it, you
Gave it to you, you'd run away. For free, you run away because the crackheads, the drugs, the crime, everything, and there's a lot of black people living there. But now, guess what? They've re-gentrified it. Now I cannot even afford a door in Hackney. You couldn't even afford a door in Hackney, you know?
Same thing in Newark. Like, I haven't been to Newark for many years. I used to live there. There was a time I was really broke, and my friend lived literally in the center of Brick City, like where there's like gunshots every night. Okay. And I had no choice. I had to stay with him. So that's where I learned street smarts with living with him. So when I was there, there's a street called Elizabeth Avenue and Meeker Avenue, and there's a park called Wickwick Park. So at around when it starts to get dark, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, you have to be inside, and you start hearing gunshots. I'm not exaggerating. This is the kind of shit you can't make up. Just hear pop, 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 pop. You just hear it all night. The next morning, you're gonna hear this number of people died, this number of people died. It's like a cycle. It just keeps going on and on and on. And then there was these drug dealers at the light, the intersection. So there was a fried chicken place, and that was the only place you could get food after 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. The rest is kind of far away, and I didn't have a car to the fried chicken because I'm hungry. You know what I'm saying? So I walked to the corner, and these guys, you can see their guns right there, like literally. You know what I'm saying? And they're looking at you like, who the fuck is this guy? So my friend taught me how to do it. I was just scared because I was like, I don't want to get shot. So basically he said, look, all they're looking for is you're not a threat, and you're not a rat, and you are not somebody who's going to cause tension. That's it. They don't care about you. You know what I'm saying? So when I walked in, I changed my accent and I put on a very strong Nigerian accent. So I was like, hello, my brother, how are you? And they're like, yeah. So after a while, they saw me every day going to the fried chicken place, and I started becoming cool with them. I'm like, hey, shake their hands, walk right through. So one day they tried to sell me drugs, and I told them, oh, I'm sorry, I don't smoke. It's not good for you, So I was trying to put on that kind of innocence, whatever. After a while, they didn't care about me. I felt actually comfortable walking through them. I actually did not feel threatened. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And same thing, if I go in the building, it's an elevator. And my friend taught me, like, okay, when you walk in and there's another Negro next to you, you have to pretend like you got a gun. So you got to put your hand under your jacket like this and just acknowledge his presence, like, hey, what's up, And he's doing the same thing. So he doesn't know if you have a gun. You don't know if he has a gun. So basically, it's like one of those nigger moments, you know what I'm saying? So you have to press a different button from the floor you're going to so that he thinks you're going to that floor. So when you're leaving, like, yeah, and then you walk out, and then you can literally, I've seen people literally peep out to see where I'm going. That's how scary it was. You get what I'm saying? So I lived there for like a year. I learned a lot of things about these things, but I'll be honest with you, right now, I would feel more comfortable walking through a gang. I'll feel like more comfortable than walking through a place where there's police officers. And that's very sad.